Welcome back to the Restoring Darkness podcast. My name is Michael Colligan and I'm the host. This podcast is brought to you by the Lighting in Darkness Foundation and with our partner organization, Softlights, softlights.org. Before we get to our guest today, David Lefevre, we're going to go over to Mark Baker. Mark, give us the Softlights update. Whose ass are you kicking? What are you doing? What's going down?
Well, big deal this week, Michael. I filed a pro se lawsuit against the Food and Drug Administration and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in the U.S. for failing to protect us from LED headlights on cars. There's a specific statute, 21 USC 360II, parenthesis A, parenthesis 6, parenthesis capital A, that requires the FDA and the NHTSA to maintain a liaison. That means that they need to collaborate, work together. They need to be testing the LED. That has to be made, and there's no option. It's called non-discretionary. And because they're not doing that, because they're not listening and they're not working together, I have letters from NHTSA telling me that they rely on the FDA for health impacts. And on the other end is the FDA relying on NHTSA for safety impacts for the cars. So put them together, we need health and safety for car headlights, and they're not doing it. So my lawsuit was filed just this week, and so that's our big news.
Well, I love what you're doing. You cut out a little bit there, Mark. So what I want you to do is, while I talk about what you just said, I want you shut down everything else on your computer except this instance of this. When I went to China, Mark, in 2014, I got off the plane and, me English speakers, we're used to everything being in English, right? Everything should be in English. What are you talking about? I'm Canadian or American. It should be in my language. I don't speak any other languages. But we got to this one part of the airport, and there was this Chinese sign, and below it, there were these two English signs, really small, and it said this way, that way. And it had two arrows pointing together. And it said this way, that way. Now, what it was referring to was that you were supposed to go through this line that kind of traveled like this. But that this way, that way sounds like the FDA and this National Institute of Highway Traffic, blah, 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 whatever it's called. They're pointing at each other, and there's four fingers pointing back at them, right? And this is the kind of stuff we encounter. This is the battle Mark's fighting. If you want to support the Softlights Foundation, you go to softlights.org and you support Mark's work there. He's working hard. It's the fish trying to eat the whale. It's David versus Goliath, however you want to put it. So go to softlights.org, go to restoringdarkness.com if you want to support what we're working on. Right now we have David Lefevre. Welcome to the Restoring Darkness podcast. David is a citizen, basically, who likes to ride motorcycles. He's an amateur astronomer. He speaks 3 languages. He stumbled across the light pollution phenomenon 5 years ago, and now he is working to restore night and preserve darkness. David, welcome again to the show.
Yes.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Exactly. In fact, I've discovered light pollution 5 years ago. And the most stunning fact I discovered about this is that no one is aware about it. So in our area, I live near Switzerland, near the Swiss border. I work in Switzerland, even if I'm French. And there is an event each year, which is named La Nuit est Belle, which means the night is great. And all the cities around the Geneva Lake are shutting down the lights for one night. So this is awesome. This is really awesome because you can see the sky. And this is a real event to talk about light pollution to people. And my, my goal here is to make awareness about people, because me on my own, I won't be able to do many things, but together we are stronger. So my goal is to make people aware of this problem, to make people aware of the several issues we have with light pollution. And maybe that way we'll be able to act something in different countries.
You know, it's interesting. This is a theme that's come up over and over again on this show, and Mark's very frustrated about it, and as am I, in that light pollution is a pollution. It is not a metaphor. Okay. And there is
Yes.
a myriad of consequences to light pollution. The second part is light pollution is getting not infinitely, but exponentially worse as we move
Yes.
forward. And so I would encourage the people around the lake that you're talking about in Switzerland to turn their lights off all the time at night. Actually, why
I
are
would
they
like
on?
to.
So why is it that people are doing these one-off events? It's like a one-off thing. It's like a box checking exercise or something to say, yes, we should have the lights on, but we're all going to turn them on the next day and we're back to the usual. How bad is the light pollution in that area as a phenomenon that exists?
Here, I will talk in the area and globally in Europe. Almost 95% of the people cannot see the stars at night. In Europe, it's a big issue. It's a big problem, and people are just switching on lights more and more. We have, as you were talking a bit before, the problem with LEDs now, which are replacing all light bulbs, which comes with a lot of other problems.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to make people aware of that. And as you were talking, there are multiple consequences on the human health, on the economy, on the energy, on the biodiversity as well.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I've discovered today that a study was published last week about Alzheimer illness and a link between Alzheimer and light pollution. So we knew about stroke, we knew about stress, depression, and now we can add Alzheimer phenomenon to this. So for the human, it's a real issue, it's a real problem, but we are not alone on the planet. We should care as well about the insects, about the animals, about every life which is around us. So here, talking about a little more about Geneva, there is this event which is switching all the lights off during one night. But I'm trying to be in touch with these Geneva people who are organizing this event to attack the light pollution problem with another angle. For example, I'm sure it is the same problem in the US. All the signs of the shops and all the shops themselves are still enlightened at night. And this is simply useless.
Mm-hmm.
And this creates, of course, light pollution. And we have decided to reward some shops and some vendors who are switching off the lights at night. We don't want to blame the other and say, oh, this is a bad guy. No, we are taking the opposite way and we are trying to make some value of those who are switching off the light. So we've created here a little sticker for the shops saying this vendor, this shop respect the night, with a link to a website I've designed which presents all the aspects of light pollution and all the consequences. Because this is something I've been searching on the web. There are multiple sources about the different consequences light pollution has. And in fact, I've been struggling a lot because on one website, you've got the problem with insects, for example.
Mm-hmm.
On another website, you've got the problem with human health. On another website, you've got the problem for astronomers, who cannot see the stars. But there were no, to my knowledge, there were no information source gathering all the aspects. So that's what I've done. I've created this one. It's freely available. And to make people aware around the planet, I've translated it in 8 languages. So it's available in Spanish. If you want to get a look and tell me if there are some things to correct, please do so. In Spanish, in German, in French, in Italian, in Russian, in Romanian, and in English, of course.
Mm. And that if you're listening to this right now, you'll find the link to that website in the show notes. So you can just scroll down on your device or on your computer, and you can click and you can check out David's site. Why is it so difficult in 2024 for humans to accept that they're not a nocturnal species? Like, it seems like it's very difficult for us to accept that our ability to live into the night using technology is not healthy for us, and it's not healthy for our environment. Why is it that we can't accept this, that we're a diurnal species? We should be awake during the day and we should be asleep at night, and we should make our technology sleep as well. Um, why can we not accept that? This seems to be something that humans have kicked themselves loose of their zoological realities
Yeah.
to the species. Why is that?
I think, in fact, people have forgotten about this fact, because if you came back 2 or 3 centuries back, there were no lightning, artificial lightning. It was not existing at all. So people were living with the daylight, with the sunlight. And obviously, during the summer, they were having much more long days. And during the winter, the day were shorter. And they were living with that rhythm. The How could I say, the human body has adapted to this rhythm. And with Mr. Edison inventing the light bulbs, which was a great invention, I'm not saying otherwise, which was a great invention, it came, it became a bigger problem as well. But it's so fantastic to do what you want, whenever you want, wherever you want. You just have to bring light, artificial light, obviously, and a problem for people to understand that there are consequences is that it's about biological phenomenon. So when you're sick, just to take a quick example, when you're ill, when you've got a flu, for example, it takes some days to come back to normal, and this is a quite short amount of time. But for species to adapt the different environments, it takes years, decades, and maybe centuries sometime. And what we have discovered, what we see about the light pollution problem, is that artificial lighting is a really recent phenomenon. In fact, I don't know if you know when it was invented. It was in the late century in France, uh, when the king was fighting to have the court not attacked by night. So he decided to enlight the streets of Paris, and then become the artificial lighting of every city. Nowadays, you don't have any city without lightning, and it's a shame. But people have forgotten that they are animals and they should follow the circadian rhythm, the alternative day, night, day, night, day, night.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Hey, David, so on our groups, we talk about light pollution, and we have members from different countries, mostly English speaking, but I have one member in Russia. But we talk about France from time to time. And here in the US, or our perception is that France is actually on the cutting edge of controlling light pollution. We actually admire France. So, the rest of us are way behind. So, what's your perception living there? Is France actually doing a good job? Are the laws that they've passed actually doing it? Are the sign laws and the decrees that they put out? Maybe you could tell us something about the different laws that they've presented. And is it working?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I do agree. From the outside of the country, France is doing a great job. But when you're inside, you are still facing a problem. The problem is quite simple. In 2018, there was a law stating that at night, for the shops, the lights have to be shut off 1 hour maximum after the last person has left the shop. And they are defining little things like this to avoid having shops signs enlighten at night. It's the same for parks, and they do present a list of constraints that cities have to respect about the lighting. The biggest problem with that is that people, the shop, the vendor, even the public people, the mayor, are not aware of this law. So we do have constraints, we do have laws, but no one knows they exist. So it's not applied. That's a shame. That's awful, because we have the regulations to make something applied and to go in the right way, but people are not aware, and it's really difficult to make them understand that this is a problem, and then the law has to be applied. Last year there was a little change in the law. It was more restrictful, and they have added some important point, I would say. Before, the law was stating that you have to enlight during I would say, the evening or the morning in winter, for example, but not at night. And now this is the same, but if you don't, you will have to pay fees. You will have to pay the state for not respecting this law. So there is a sanction which was not here before, and it was added last year, and we are trying to, how could I say, to make vendors, shops, and public people aware of this, stating that, hey, if you don't respect the law, you will have to pay something about it. Then it's a leverage, but if we want to go in that way, I'm just a citizen, for example. I cannot state that you have to pay something. No, I'm just a citizen, so I don't have any law on my on my shoulder. But I can say I want to see the authorities and make them see that you're not respecting the law. But it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy, because you have to go around the city at night and with the police or any authorities, and hey, look, they are not respecting the law, so please do something. And it's not a priority. The priority is to make people safe at night. And this is quite a problem also, because people at night have the feeling that if it's not enlightened, it's not safe. So we must have light to be safe, but in fact, it's not. For example, for the houses, the burglar in the house, statistics, at least in France, show that most of the burglars are acting during the day, because it's easier. They see what they have in the house, not at night. And of course, you will always find, statistically speaking, you will always find someone telling you, oh, I know a friend who has been robbed at night while he was sleeping. Indeed, it exists. That's right. But looking at the statistics, it's maybe 1 or 2%. 90% of the robbing is done during the day, when people are at work or going out to pick up the kids at school. So at night, shut up the lights.
We have a phrase, I don't know if you use it there in France, but in the newspaper articles, this comes up all the time. This crime occurred in broad daylight, as if that's a shock, right? But the statistics, which you just mentioned, is like, well, that's not a surprise. In broad daylight, it's not a surprise. Or at nighttime with plenty of light, it occurred under bright LED lights. That's not a surprise to us. So we need the media to stop using that phrase.
Exactly. And the most difficult part is, in fact, that not to be safe at night when there is no light is just a feeling. It's not a statistic. It's a feeling. So to make people understand, to go against their fear, it's really, really difficult, because you cannot explain a fear. Oh, I fear spiders. I fear snakes. I fear dark. And on this point, there is an interesting story. I'm pretty sure you know Alfred Hitchcock,
Mm-hmm.
obviously.
Sure.
And he started to make films outside with the arrival of new light bulbs for the cinema.
Mm-hmm.
And he was acting, making the people acting their movies, and the crimes were done where there were no lights, where you cannot see what happened inside the movie. And it has entered people's mind. Oh, when it's dark, I've seen it at the cinema. When it's dark, it's not safe. And this is one way people were afraid of the dark. But in fact, it's not. But as I said,
That's
it's a feeling, so it's difficult.
yes, David. If I can connect you back to the signs issue, though. So those signs are not there to illuminate the pathway for people. It's not there to allow people to feel safe. So it seems to me that turning off the signs would be okay. Maybe there's some other light source. There's probably street lights, right? Or there's plenty of lights from headlights, whatever. It's all coming. So it seems to me that signs issue. If somebody complains and says, "Well, I want those signs on for safety," that seems to be irrational. Um, Here's a suggestion that, or it's a thought that's in my mind. So in the United States, we have it's called code enforcement. So if they have a
Mm-hmm.
light pollution law for a city that they've put together and says you can't have this light bothering your neighbors or you can't have it on after 10 p.m. or something, that's great. But we have the same problem with enforcement. Okay. So then if
Okay.
you call down to code enforcement or you send them an email and say, hey, this neighbor, and I've done this already in cities across the US, and you say, hey, there's this violation. They say, well, I work from 8 till 5. I don't go out at
Mm.
night.
Mm.
And that's the end of the story. They don't, that's the end. There's nobody there. So I like, how do you deal with this? Right. So what I'd like to see, and I've tried it, but not successfully, that a citizen can snap a photo and upload it to the city's website, little description of what it is, geolocate or whatever. So here's the light pollution. Here's where it's occurring. I'm submitting this. Now, you don't even need to go out there. Here's the address, right? Now, just send your paper,
Mm.
send a notice or whatever. And that would be the enforcement action that nobody has to go out. It would be that the citizen. What do you think of that? Would that work in your area? Some kind of
We've
database.
tried we've tried a little to do so, especially using social network about this point, taking pictures at night and making a review of the shop on Google, for example, in the Google reviews, and stating that, oh, your shop is great, but I've noticed with the picture that at night it's still enlightened, and it shouldn't. So you are not you are not a bad guy. So you don't put 0 as a note for the review, but we've noticed that people are quite following this the reviews on Google,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it helps to make the light to be shut down. What we are trying to do, I've seen last week, you had a guest, which is Yana Yakushina,
Mm-hmm.
which is a European lawyer. I've been in touch with her. What we've done on our side before getting in touch with her, we had the French, not the French, the European election in June, and send, to make people aware, we've written to all in France and in some other country in Europe, we've written to people running for these elections, stating, if you are elected, would you mind taking care of the light pollution? So we are trying to get at the European level to make things change. Maybe to take the France as example with the law, and then to make this at the European level to fall down on the several countries we have in Europe
Mm.
to extend the regulations. But obviously, as you know, with administration, it takes a lot of time.
I wrote down here regulation without enforcement. It's a big problem in all aspects of pollution. So if you regulate and you force people to comply, and people comply with those regulations, and then you squeeze the compliers, and the people that break the regulations don't get touched. Right? So this is how it works in my province in Ontario. The last thing you want to do is fill out a form from the city of Toronto, Canada. You fill out some form from the city of Toronto, they send you saying, hey, we want to help with our bus routes, and we want to know how many people work at your office and all this sort of stuff. The next day, you get the city coming to you because you were the idiot that filled out the form. Okay? And nobody else filled out the form. And so now they're coming by. What's your smoking policy? How are you helping your employees become more healthy? I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? This guy wants to smoke. I don't really care. So the problem is that in Canada, we have a squeeze the compliers policy, right? When it comes to taxation, environmental regulations, all this sort of stuff. If you actually happen to fill out the government's forms, that's the worst thing you could possibly do. The best thing to do is completely ignore them, and then they won't come after you. I'm telling you, this is how it works in Canada. The last thing you want to do is fill out Environmental Canada's one of their forms on your business where it relates to pollution. So regulation without enforcement or squeezing the compliers is a huge problem, I think, in most European and countries in Canada, United States.
Yes.
It's a big problem. The one thing I would say on what you guys talked about when it comes to the safety argument, David, is that there is no evidence, zero, that more light equals more safety. That is a straw man argument. Now, I don't know if you know straw man argument versus steel man argument. So this Mr. Straw Man always says to the other side, you show me all the evidence and the proof that I'm wrong. But they have no requirement to show any evidence or any proof that they're correct. They're operating on a failed axiomatic presupposition, which is that more light equals more safety, and you're wrong unless you prove me wrong. And what happens is the evidence is nuanced. There's some evidence that shows that light helps. There's some evidence that shows that it hurts, and all this sort of stuff. But they're stuck in this mindset. Lawyers, judges, city officials, courts, insurance companies, all these types of people, if there's a crime in the back, you don't have enough light. It's ridiculous. I don't know how we get out of that trap, David. It's a very difficult trap.
It's I totally agree with you. And as I was saying before about the security, it's more a fear problem. It's an emotion. It's not a fact, indeed. And we've been doing here some evenings. When I say we, because I'm not alone fighting in France and in my area to fight this light pollution. So we've been organizing evenings with a little, how could I say, visit of the city without lights. And we were discussing with the city before. On that day, could you switch off the light, because we are organizing that tour in the city to make people realize and see what's really going on when you shut off the light. And they were all stunned, completely astonished by a simple fact. For example, the cars, the drivers, run slower when there is no light. And when you say this to people, they do not believe you. No, it's impossible. But when they do see actually that it's real, they change their mind. But just telling them is not enough. You have to show them. They need some evidence that it is true. And multiple times, I've noticed that when you shut off the light, you don't see where you're driving. You need to pay attention to every detail. Then you go slower. That's simple as that. But to make people accept this fact, you have to show them. So it comes to fight this phenomenon. It comes with a lot of energy to show people, to organize events at night, to discuss with people. And it's not like you're viewing a video on YouTube or something else because, it's cinema, it's fake. No, they see with their own eyes, and then they can start to think about it.
The problem is, I wish I knew the term for this, where somebody investigates the problem and they find out that there was no electric lighting in that area, and they determine that that was the cause of the problem without any evidence proving that the lack of light caused the problem. But they just determine that. And this happens all over the place with insurance companies, everywhere. You need more light. If we're not going to insure you unless you put more light, you're going to get sued. And judges will accept lack of electric light as a liability for corporations. And so we're on this slope downwards towards a totally light polluted world because of the straw man argument where you don't have to prove that more light equals more safety, because that's obvious to everybody, but it's actually not true. It's actually not true.
That's not true. That's not true. For example, in France, we've got 1/3 of all the cities in France that are switching off the light at least in the middle of the night, not completely, no 100% starting the sundown and to the morning, but in the heart of the night. So usually from midnight to 5 a.m. There is 1/3 of the cities in France that do switch off the light. And we are trying to make this number come bigger. And not only the little cities in the mountains or near the shore. No. There are big cities in France who have tested switching off the center of the city at night for 1 year. They did not notice more crimes, more accidents. There still are, of course, but not more than when it was enlightened. So they are keeping it down. And there are several experiments like this that have been done in France by big cities, which are a good argument to go that way. But obviously, as you were saying, it's a feeling and it's difficult to...
Mark Baker, before we go over to you, I just want to say, our electric light is neither the cause nor the solution to crime. It's not involved in that. Crime is a different problem, Mark Baker. Over to you.
Wow. David, I've never heard that before. A couple of things you just said. These are great stuff. That's why we think France is doing the best. Even if, out of all the countries, it's worse everywhere else. We see in regulations protecting public health and safety. Those are the buzzwords. We don't often see civil rights, but it should be included. We also don't see comfort, but it should be included. So in the laws, it's public health and safety. So I use those all the time. So we talked a bit about safety. You mentioned at the beginning of the show about Alzheimer's, and that's just one of the medical aspects. So light pollution has increased greatly the risk of different kinds of cancers, mood disorders, premature births, early mortality. And so there's just every health impact you can think of is actually bad because of light pollution. So are you using any health concerns? Would you try to scare the citizens into doing something to turn off the lights? Would you try to educate them? Would you try to educate city officials? How are you doing that?
We are trying multiple things, but it's difficult because it takes a lot of energy, not electrical energy, but human energy. And we are trying to make people aware. When I say people, it's city officials. And they are the most difficult to convince because on the one hand, they can listen to you, they see your points, your arguments, but on the other hand, they have the electors and they don't want to be, how could I say, they don't want to go against the will of the electors. So when people say, hey, I want light in my city at night, okay, I will do that. Even if you have convinced them that the light is a bad thing at night. So discussing with city official is one part of a solution, I would say. But discussing as well with people, with citizens, is also a part of the solution. Because if people, how could I say, are aware of the fact that light is more a problem than a solution, they will go and see the city the mayor or the council say, maybe we should do something about the light. And there is another one aspect we want to address as well to make people aware. It's not really people, it's the kids. You know, we are arriving in the Christmas period, and you've seen on the TV that there are a lot of advertising for the kids. And hey, dad, I want this. Hey, dad, I want this. Mom, I want this. So when when commercials want to make people buy something, they talk to the kids. So why shouldn't we do the same thing and make the kids aware of the problem? So we have to adapt the discourse as well, but then go inside the mind of the people through the kids and stating, look what is going on with your city, with your environment, with the animals, with everything, with your health. And maybe we should talk about this, and you will be talking to your parents about that. And then it goes up the chain. You see what I mean? So we are trying to make people aware, but on several levels, in fact.
Oh, the idea, the awareness creation, the association that sponsored this podcast created 7 steps to darkness restoration and night preservation, and the first one is awareness creation, like you're doing. People don't believe that light pollution is pollution. It's a number one problem to solve.
Yeah.
You know, I always say on this show, and Mark and I agree, this is a 100-year problem. It's going to take 100 years to solve this problem. So we're just in the beginning here. We probably won't live to see it happen. And we were joking before that we're going to upload our minds to the computers so that we can see it happen and preserve it. But David, do you have any final thoughts for the Restoring Darkness listeners and viewers out there?
I think the most important point to make things change is to make people aware of it. And as you were saying just previously, people do not understand, they don't understand that light pollution is a problem. So to solve this problem, I really think we have to aim first at educate people about this, make them learn that this is a problem.
And that's what we're working on here at restoringdarkness.com, the Lighting in Darkness Foundation. Of course, if you want to know about the health effects of LED lighting and the negative health effects and all the great work done by you have to get to know Mark Baker right over there. Soft Lights Foundation, go to softlights.org. Yeah. We give props to David Lefevre for coming on the show. His website is, I'm going to try to pronounce this in French. It's been a long time. Relumons les étoiles. .eu, but you have to put a dash in between each word. But you know what, folks? It's down in the description. You can just click on it there rather than me trying to say it. Along with his Facebook, his Twitter, Telegram, and LinkedIn will all be down there. We want to thank you, the most important people out there. What David and Mark and I are saying is talk to people about light pollution, even if you just in your own circle. Talk to them about
share knowledge.
That's right.
Share knowledge. Yeah.
The final point to those who made it all the way to the end: if you want the top secret weapon against a light polluting neighbor, if you want to stop a neighbor from light pollution with their nasty lights at night, write them an anonymous letter. Write them an anonymous letter. Don't tell them who you are. Write them an anonymous letter. They'll freak them out. It's worked so many times for me here in Ontario, where I've sent my neighbors who live in the country around me. I live in a farming community. I sent them letters saying, hey, those lights are really bright, but I didn't tell them who it was. The next day they're off after they received the letter. Okay.
Interesting.
Anonymous letters, people hate them. They don't know who it is. They have no enemy to put on. They have no name for their pain. So if you want to get that annoying neighbor to turn their lights off at night, send them an anonymous letter. To all you out there, thank you for listening, and bye for now.